Lesson 14, I will decompose to smaller units up to 3 times using the standard subtraction algorithm. So in lesson 14, we're going to continue to subtract. In lesson 13, we only had to decompose up to 2 times in order to subtract. Well, in this lesson, you may have to decompose up to 3 times in order to subtract. All right, so go ahead and put your name on your problem set and let's take a look at the directions. It says use the standard algorithm to solve the following subtraction problems. So we are going to continue to subtract just like we did in lesson 13. And I'm going to let you do quite a bit of this on your own. I'm going to walk you through a few of the problems, but then I'm going to let you do quite a bit of this on your own. All right, so let's take a look at A. So remember, before we start subtracting, the first thing we're going to do is look to see that we are ready to subtract in every place value. So are we ready to subtract in the ones? Yes. Are we ready to subtract in the tens? No, because 7 is greater than 6, so we are not ready to subtract. So we are going to unbundle or decompose. We're going to unbundle in the hundreds place, and we're going to have 3 hundreds left. And then I'm going to take that 100 and add it to the tens place, so that now I have 16 tens. Now I'm ready to subtract in the hundreds place, and I'm ready to subtract in the thousands place. So then I'm just going to subtract. So I have 0, 9, 0, and 1. 1,090. I'd like for you to try to do B and C all by yourself, and then let's come back and check. Okay, so let's take a look at B. So B was the first time that whenever I went to go and check to see if I was ready to subtract, I was not ready to subtract in the tens place, so I had to unbundle in the hundreds, and it was exactly like in A. So the 4 became 3, and the 6 became 16. But then I was not ready to subtract in the hundreds, so I had to unbundle again. So I had to take that 1,000 and change it into 10 hundreds and add it to the hundreds place. Then I was ready to subtract. Okay? So let's take a look at C. So the same thing happened in C. Whenever I was looking at the ones, I was ready, the tens, I was ready, but in the hundreds, I could not take 7 from 6, so I had to unbundle 1,000, and that left me with 6 thousands, and then I added that to the hundreds place. Then I was not ready to subtract in the thousands place, so I had to unbundle in the 10,000s place and add that to the thousands place. Then I was ready to subtract. And when I subtracted, this is what I got. 47,984. Okay, let's take a look at D, E, and F. Again, I'd like for you to try to do these 3 problems all by yourself, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss them. If you get stuck, you can always press play. Okay, so let's take a look at D. So in D, you can see that I had to unbundle so that I was able to subtract in the ones place. I had to unbundle so that I was able to subtract in the tens place, and I also had to unbundle so that I was able to subtract in the hundreds place. So I basically had to decompose or unbundle 3 times to be able to subtract. So let's take a look at E. If you tried this one on your own, good for you, because it got a little bit tricky really quickly. So if you take a look at E, we're not ready to subtract in the ones place. And what happens when I go to the tens place to unbundle is there's no tens. So I have to go to the hundreds. So when I unbundle 100, then that's going to give me 10 tens. But I still can't subtract in the ones place. So I have to unbundle one of these tens so that I'm able to subtract in the ones place. So that's why this is not 10, it's 9, because I unbundled from the hundreds place, and then I unbundled a 10 to make 10 ones. Now I can subtract in the ones, I can subtract in the tens, I can subtract in the hundreds, I can subtract in the thousands, but when I get here to the 10,000s, I cannot subtract. I have to unbundle that 100,000 and turn it into a 10,000. Now I'm ready to subtract. So 16 minus 7 is 9, 9 minus 1 is 8, 2 minus 1 is 1, 4 minus 1 is 3, and 12 minus 3 is 9, which gives us 93,189. All right, so now let's take a look at F. If you have not done F by yourself, pause the video and do it now. Okay, so in F, I had to unbundle so that I was able to subtract in the ones. I did not have to unbundle to subtract in the tens. I did have to unbundle to be able to subtract in the hundreds, and that was it. So that I've subtracted, I had 92,000, 979. All right, let's take a look at G, H, and I. Again, you're going to notice there are some zeros up here, but zeros should not trick you up so much if you think about what you're doing. I want you to go ahead and try to do G, H, and I by yourself. If you get stuck, you can always press play. Okay, so let's take a look at G. I'm going to walk you through this one. Hopefully you try to do it by yourself, but I'm just going to walk you through this one just to help you if you got a little bit stuck. So when I try to get ready to subtract, I see that I cannot subtract in the ones place. But there are no tens to unbundle, and there are no hundreds to unbundle, so I have to go to the thousand. So I unbundle 1,000, and that gives me 10 hundreds. But I still can't subtract in the ones, so I have to unbundle 100, and that gives me 10 tens. But I still can't subtract in the ones, so I unbundle a 10 and give that to the ones. Now I can subtract in the ones. I can subtract in the tens, I can subtract in the hundreds, and in the thousands. So now I'm ready to subtract. So I have 9, 8, 8, and 2, and everything else would be 0. So I have 2,889. If you did not try H and I on your own, do that now. Okay, so let's take a look at H. Again, I just went through every place to see if I was ready to subtract. I needed to unbundle to be able to subtract in the ones place. I didn't need to do anything to subtract in the tens place. I did need to unbundle for the hundreds and also for the thousands. So then when I subtract, this was the difference that I got. Same thing in I did need to unbundle for the ones, but I did not for the tens. I did for the hundreds, but not the thousands, and I did for the 10,000s. So that gave me 92,943. All right, so let's take a look at number 2. It says, draw a tape diagram to represent each problem. Use numbers to solve and write your answer as a statement. Check your answers. So this is very similar to what we did in the last lesson. So we have a few things we have to do. We have to draw a tape diagram. We have to use numbers to solve. We have to write our answer as a statement, and we have to check our answers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a tape diagram, and I'm going to use my rectangle here to make it a little bit neat. So this rectangle is going to represent the whole, okay? So now I have to read this problem to be able to figure out what the whole is. So there are 86,400 seconds in one day. If Mr. Legal is at work for 28,800 seconds a day, how many seconds a day is he away from work? So what's my whole or my total in this problem? Well, this would be the total, right? It says that this is how many seconds there are in one day. So we've got 86,400 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and label this seconds. So it says that Mr. Legal is at work for 28,800 seconds a day. And we're trying to figure out how many seconds he's away from work. So I'm going to label this S for seconds. You could label it whatever you wanted to, and this actually says seconds. So if I have the whole and I have a part and I'm trying to find the other part, what do I need to do to find the missing part? In this case, I need to subtract. So this is where we're going to use numbers to solve. So I've got 86,400 seconds minus 28,800 seconds. I want you to see if you can't go ahead and solve this problem, write your answer as a statement, and check your answer, and then let's come back and check together. Okay, so let's take a look here at our subtraction problem. So I did need to unbundle in order to subtract in the hundreds, and I had to unbundle again so that I was able to subtract in the thousands. And then I ended up with 57,600 seconds. So I wrote my statement, Mr. Legal is at work 57,600 seconds a day, and then I checked. I used my answer, which is S, plus the other part, which is 28,800, and I was trying to get it to equal 86,400 if my answer was correct. So since when I added, that is what I got, that means that my subtraction is correct. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. A newspaper company delivered 240,900 newspapers before 6 a.m. on Saturday. There were a total of 525,600 newspapers to deliver. How many more newspapers needed to be delivered on Sunday? Why don't you take a minute to see if you can draw the tape diagram to represent this problem? Okay, so hopefully as you read this problem, you realize that this was our total. 525,600 newspapers. That was the total number of newspapers. And then it said that 240,900 were delivered before 6 a.m. on Sunday, and we were trying to figure out how many needed to be delivered, how many more needed to be delivered on Sunday. So I used N as my variable. You could have used anything as your variable here, but I used N. So now, if I'm trying to figure out the missing part, what do I need to do? Well, I'm going to need to subtract, right? Why don't you see if you can go ahead and subtract and write your answer as a statement and check this problem all by yourself. Okay, so let's take a look here. So I figured out that in order to solve for N, I needed to subtract. So when I got ready to subtract, I saw that I needed to unbundle in the hundreds place to be able to subtract. I was fine in the thousands, but I needed to unbundle to be able to subtract in the 10,000s. So that gave me 284,700, and I wanted to check my answer by taking N plus 240,900 to see if it equaled the total. And when I added them together, I did get 525,600, so that tells me that my subtraction is correct. So I wrote my answer as a statement. 284,700 more newspapers need to be delivered on Sunday. I know that your problem set has 2 more problems, and if you have time and you'd like to go ahead and try to work 4 and 5 by yourself and you'd like for me to check them, please do so and bring them to me and I'll be glad to check them. Otherwise, we're going to stop here and we're going to work on our exit ticket.